afternoon, everybody. I brought a very special guest with me today, as you can see, Secretary McMahon. So I will begin my remarks. She's going to speak, and then we'll take some questions. She'll take questions, and I'll take questions from you as well. First off, yesterday, First Lady Melania Trump and Second Lady Usha Vance traveled to Marine Corps Air Station New River in Camp Lejeune in North Carolina, where they spent the day meeting with students, educators, military families, and United States Marines. Both the First Lady and Second Lady were grateful for the warm welcome and remain deeply committed to supporting military families and the communities that serve our great nation. May God bless all of them. In economic news, the September jobs report showed the American economy remains strong, with 119,000 new jobs added, more than double expectations. These gains came after the summer passage of President Trump's historic tax cuts and multiple big trade deals with countries around the world. In particular, construction jobs surged by 19,000 in September, the largest monthly gain in a year. Nearly all of this solid monthly job growth came from the private sector and went to Americans rather than foreign-born workers, the opposite of what we saw under the previous administration. Inflation also remains under control, and wages are up by 3.8% over the year for American workers because of President Trump's pro-growth policies. In fact, real wages are on pace to increase roughly $1,200 for the average worker this year under President Trump. This is a complete reversal of the failed Biden era, when we saw inflation skyrocket to 9%. Causing private sector workers to see their wages decline by approximately $3,000. We know that Americans are still hurting from the 4-decade high inflation caused by Joe Biden and the Democrats, but President Trump is making significant progress to fix this, and he will not stop working until he solves it. As the president recently stated, he is never satisfied. For example, President Trump's policies are working to make Americans' Thanksgiving more affordable this year, from their commute to the dinner table. Nearly 100 million Americans are expected to drive next week to spend time with loved ones for the holiday. And thanks to President Trump's drill baby drill agenda, the national average price of a gallon of gas on Thanksgiving Day is projected to be at the cheapest price since the COVID pandemic in 2021. President Trump is bringing down gas prices and providing significant savings to American families at the pump. And again, we expect those prices to continue to decline. According to the American Farm Bureau Federation's annual survey, cooking Thanksgiving dinner will also cost less this year than it did last year and is down about 5% overall. The average price for a staple of the meal, a 16-pound frozen turkey, is down more than 16% from last year, which will provide critical savings for families and their budgets. President Trump's entire economic agenda is aimed at putting more money back into the pockets of hardworking Americans. That's why he signed the largest middle tax cuts in history into law, from no tax on overtime, no tax on tips, to no tax on Social Security. And according to a new study from Piper Sandler, which is out this week, tax filers can expect an extra $1,000 bump to their tax refund next year, and what could be a record-breaking tax refund season. So there is more good news to come. We know these refunds will make a huge difference for Americans to help pay down their bills and use towards life's expenses. In other news this week, President Trump took a significant step toward delivering on a core campaign promise to finally close the Department of Education. To shrink the bloated federal bureaucracy, the Department of Education just entered into new interagency agreements with 4 agencies: the Departments of Labor, Interior, Health and Human Services, and State. These agencies will now ensure the delivery of legally required programs while also refocusing them to better serve students. This common sense action brings the Trump administration much closer to finally returning education where it belongs, at the state and local level, not in Washington, D.C. The Democrats' reckless 43-day government shutdown did manage to do one valuable thing. It proved that America does not need a federal Department of Education. During the longest shutdown in history, the Department of Education furloughed 90% of its staff, and America's education system was not impacted whatsoever. Schools stayed fully open across the country. Students attended class and received normal in-person instruction, and our wonderful teachers received their paychecks uninterrupted. The Democrats' government shutdown made it painfully obvious that American families do not need the Department of Education. Since its creation in 1979 during the Carter administration, the Department of Ed has spent over $3 trillion taxpayer dollars without improving student achievement, despite peer pupil spending having increased by more than 245% since the 1970s. Math and reading scores are down in public schools. In fact, the most recent Nation's Report Card from 2024 showed that 13-year-olds' math scores are the lowest they've been in decades, and their reading scores are the lowest since testing began more than 30 years ago. It's clear that throwing more money at a broken system does not work, and that's why President Trump appointed the amazing leader behind me, our Secretary of Education, Linda McMahon, who is making these monumental changes at the direction of the president. We're very grateful to have you here today to talk about these changes and then take some questions. Hopefully folks in this room will have some questions on the very important topic of education. So please, Mrs. Secretary.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Karoline. It's really a pleasure to be here with you today, and thank all of you for being here as well. My purpose here is to speak directly to the American families, not just you, but to the American families, about the work this administration is doing in education to reverse our national decline with a hard reset of our educational system. That reset was a top campaign promise from President Trump to send education back to the states and end Washington's micromanagement of education once and for all. This week we took the most decisive steps thus far to make good on this promise to you. We have linked 6 groundbreaking partnerships with other federal agencies to delegate education department programs that are redundant with existing programs at Labor, State, Interior, and HHS. These interagency agreements to cut our own bureaucratic bloat are a key step in our efforts to shift educational authority from Washington, D.C. to your state education agency, your local superintendent, your local school board, entities that are accountable to you, and we encourage parents to always be involved. Cutting federal bureaucracy is never a popular move among D.C. insiders. A chorus of anti-Trump voices have come out of the woodwork to complain that we are defunding education, harming students, or acting without a plan. This could not be further from the truth. The majority of Americans across the country handed to President Trump the popular vote precisely because they have seen the brokenness of a top-down education system run by the federal government. They're painfully aware that only 3 out of 10 students can read proficiently at their grade level. They know that college students are collectively $1.7 trillion in debt, and less than half of college graduates get a job that actually uses the degree which they studied so hard to get. They see more teachers than ever before leaving the profession due to burnout, over-regulation, and lack of autonomy in the classroom. Anti-Trump voices are stirring up fear that returning education to the states is a draconian action. When Americans hear that we are shutting down the department, but given no other details, 51% oppose it. But when those same Americans are informed of our plans to preserve important elements of our work in other federal agencies and to maintain the K-12 funding that is distributed to the states, that number flips to an even greater majority at 56%. They support returning education to the states and breaking up the bureaucracy. That's because the Department of Education is a pass-through entity. It doesn't educate a single student. The money it sends to states for education can be sent directly without waste. The Democrats' government shutdown proved that without a doubt, and I'll reiterate what you said, that the Department of Education was not necessary during the shutdown. Now, this is what I've seen already on my 50-state tour that I've embarked on. Educators are innovating in their schools. States are customizing their budgets and standards, and post-secondary institutions are planning for the economy of the future. But we're not leading them. They are informing us. That's why our final mission as a department is to fully empower states to carry the torch of our educational renaissance. Education is local. It should be overseen locally by those who best know local needs. We're not ending federal support for education. We are ending federal micromanagement and paving the way for education renewal through state reforms like school choice, the science of reading, and restoring the right priorities in higher education. President Trump promised to send education back to the states, and we're keeping that promise. America's next generation will look back on the work we've carried out, thankful for an education system that prioritizes students over bureaucracy. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Madam Secretary, and we'll take some questions for the Secretary if you have them. Elizabeth, why don't you start?
Thank you for joining us. You announced the partnership to move some functions of the Education Department to other agencies. Are you talking to members of Congress about codifying this so that it lasts beyond the administration?
Yes, we started our conversation, and thanks very much for asking that, because there have been some reports that Congress is in the dark on this. That's clearly not true. We've been talking to, I've talked to dozens of members of Congress to explain to them exactly what we're doing, to bring them up to speed, and to say to them, look, when we have completed some of these transfers that are working incredibly well, then we will be looking to Congress to codify those, make them permanent.
Brian.
Thank you. Secretary McMahon, what is the update on the negotiations with Harvard? I know the President has publicly pointed to you as somebody who's worked on that. I think you've talked about that at length, but I'd like to understand where are things with those negotiations with Harvard this time?
They're ongoing negotiations, and I feel very comfortable that we are getting close to having those negotiations finalized. It's been open door conversation all along.
Deanna?
Hello, Mrs. Secretary. The President recently posted about establishing a federal standard for AI. Do you know if the administration has a view on the use of AI for students in schools? And Karoline, do you know if the President personally uses AI?
I don't think so.
You can handle
I've
that
never
one.
witnessed it, so I can't attest to that.
Well, I do think AI is going to need guardrails, but I have witnessed AI firsthand. I was at the Alpha School in Austin, Texas, and the first 2 hours of every day in that school, students are learning through AI. They have their headsets on, they're in front of their screens, and the AI is really acting as like an individual tutor for those students, allowing those students that can progress faster to do that. Those who need a little catch up, it refeeds information to them. And so after those 2 hours of learning, the basics of what they're doing in their curriculum that day, then they spend the rest of the day, I mean, they have good recess and all of that time, but then they spend the rest of the day in what are called life skills, and they're actually using the information that they've learned this morning. So I've seen some AI in action that is really proving quite beneficial.
Michael.
Thank you, Karoline. Secretary McMahon, as the Education Department continues to pare down, can you talk about taxpayer services like charter school grants and how the department will continue to assist kids with special needs?
Well, we are going to make sure that there's no interruption in getting that grant money out the door. I mean, that money is, it comes from Congress, it's appropriated by Congress, and we legally are obligated to do that. And the transitions we're starting to make, our first programs that went over to the Department of Labor, that was a few weeks ago. We actually signed the first interagency agreement, which we accomplished under the authority of the Economy Act. We transferred grants for WIOA and for the Perkins Act. And the really good news is that the Department of Labor has a much more sophisticated system, technology system and grant